Okay, here is my speed run for the deep sea diving Excel esports case. Right, this first one is just based on the values of the first three treasures in order. So it's, that as a row times those values, how much of each we have, sum them all up. This one, I'm actually going to make a lookup table for this. So what? This is the letter, this is the picture, Control T, and call this T. T for treasure. So now XLOOKUP string to array of this to look up each of those, right? On T letter, returning T value. Right, and this will give me all the values and then sum them up to get the total value. All right, now we're going to dive. So we're dive based on an arrow. The instructions tell me how much each arrow is worth, right? So side to side is 4, diagonals are 5, up and down is 3, and that is also side to side for 4. So now I just multiply the arrow's value times the number of cells traveled, right? And don't forget to return to the boat, times 2. And then this one to figure out the number of meters, right? So I need to know what the address here. I'm going to do my distance lambda, right? So this is the Chebyshev distance, which works like a king on the chessboard. So diagonal is allowed and print components is allowed, and I want it as a row this time. So the first component here is the diagonal. That is worth 5 meters. The up and down is worth 4 meters. Or no, that's the up and down is worth 3 meters, plus the side to side is worth 4 meters. And I have it set up so it'll always go in the same place. So this is the distance in meters, which is the answer to level 4. Level 5 is the same thing, but we're going to add the swim PSI. And we're also going to look at the depth in meters and the depth PSI. So the swim PSI is 2 PSI per meter, and don't forget to return to the boat. Only numbers for this tells me the depth in cells, right? -2, because the boat itself is on row 2. So that is the number of cells, 3 meters per cell. Then the PSI is 10 PSI per meter, according to the instructions. So the PSI used is just that plus that. All right, now we got to add excitement. So we got to figure out what treasure we're getting, first of all. So here I'll make a little, X2 call of this, just makes a lookup table so I don't have to use indirect. And then I XLOOKUP this on here, returning here. And then I want to know some stuff about this, right? So XLOOKUP the picture on T pick, returning T, I'm just going to grab everything, T data, right? And I'll grab equals T headers just to make it a little easier for myself here. So I need to know excitement PSI according to the instructions. It's the excitement factor times 25. So the air pressure the tank that I started with 2000 tank minus that, minus that, minus that. So 3 uses of PSI for the depth, for swimming, and for excitement. Now we're going to do the same thing, but for a whole route here, right? So do that for the route. That is the first step of the route. These are all the same. The distance, I'm not going straight back to the boat though, right? I'm not going straight back to the boat on these. So now instead of the distance being to the boat, it's the distance to the prior one, right? So I'm going from one to another. I got rid of the ×2 for going for the round trip going back to the boat. This needs to be based on there. So now I need to know if it's safe. So to determine if it's safe, I'm gonna see if I can go back. I see if I can go back to the boat, right? So it's safe if, in theory, I could go back to the boat and still have 200 left. So diagonal allowed, yes. Print components, yes. Right, I want this as a row. So this is if I went directly back to the boat, not row, to row. If I go directly back to the boat, the distance and the swimming work out like this. So what do I have left? All right, well, actually, before I do that, actually, I'm going to see what my tank is like, right? So my tank starts at 1500. So now it's this minus my swimming, my depth. Oh, no, there's another thing about depth I got to worry about. So depth only counts if it's a new maximum, right? So I'm going to figure out what my old maximum depth was. So the maximum from before now is this in $ N16 to N $16, right? That was the old maximum depth. So now what I actually have is the maximum of 0, right? Because it can't go below, I don't get a refund if I go up, right? So the maximum of 0 and the depth minus the old max, right? So that times 10. So it only counts if, I was already at 27. So going from 27 to 60 gives me this. And then once I'm at 60, I don't go any deeper. All right, so now my tank is this minus excitement, minus depth, minus swimming. So that's how much I have in my tank. I need to check if it's safe. So what if I went directly back to the boat? Would I have at least 200 left, right? Is the margin for safety. So this is, what's left. And is it safe? Well, if this is greater than or equal to 200, then yes, it's safe. Otherwise, it's not. Okay, so then the value of my trip is some product of whether it's safe and the value that I got out of the dive. Okay, check this, 1,000 points so far. Okay, value of all the treasure on the sea floor is simply what? The sum of XLOOKUP on the treasures, right? Which are all here. So all those treasures on treasure picture returning treasure value. How many meters is the furthest item? So then I'm going to use my my little formulas here to get to meters, right? So I just do this, but for every one of these treasures, right? So from here, right, to AI2, right, which is my boat location. How many meters is it? Nope, it's not lined up. Got to be lined up to CA like that. And then the maximum number of meters here is 153. All right, so 5 treasures in order. Well, the order matters now, right? So I'm going to do another X to call for the orders. So now I've got the orders in the same configuration as my treasure map, right? Here, right? And make sure this lines up, which it does. So now I've got these in order, and I care about, the value, right? So I'm going to grab this and this. So this is the order. This is the pick. So if I then do, I sort these by the order. I need to know the value, right? So that is XLOOKUP, all of this on T pick returning T value. And then the sum of 5 in a row of these, right? Is what it says. How many did it say can I get in a row? 5 in a row. So if I get 5 in a row, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. So what's the best of these routes is 18,100. All right, if you collected all the crowns in one dive. All right, well, let's see where the crowns are, and then let's make a plan to dive. So first of all, there's this. This I use for B3, right? But then I'm gonna make a new sheet for B4, bonus 4, based on these treasures, but only the crowns is the only ones that I care about, right? So I'm gonna put the crowns here and then just get rid of everything else. So now I need to know the order. I could try to figure out the order, but I don't know how to do that. So I'm just going to I'm going to test every order, right? So I use my selections. Is here. So for the selections, it's based on this array. I want groups of 5. The order does matter, which will give me every, what's that called? Permutation. So every permutation of 5 is there. And then what? Text join, a semicolon, right? Is how these, I'm just doing this the exact same way that level 7 was formatted, right? Because I'm going to make a new copy of level 7. We'll call this B4B, right? And then I'm going to take all of these possible routes and test them in here. So the route goes here. I'm gonna start, if I start with 0 air pressure, right? The amount of air pressure that I used is -1 times this. That's the amount that I used, right? So test all of these using what column input cell is here. And then I want the lowest of these, right? Which is 2996. All right, 2996. Now I'm going to make more routes, which is, it's got to go in order, but I get, as many as I can grab in 2500, right? So for B5, let's give me a sheet to work with for B5. So I'm just going to create a blank sheet and call it B5. I'm going to grab the treasures in order, right? Is the addresses in order is all I care about for this, right? Then I'm going to sort this by address and order. Going to sort this in order, right? And then let's make some routes with text join. Again, I'm going to use this. I don't know, how far do I have to go down, do we think? Let's say a lot, because they're near each other, so it's definitely going to make more than it could before. That's plenty, right? So that's going to go, all the way down, right? So now I grab these possible routes, and I need to make another version of level 7 to test them in, right? Which is B5B for bonus 5, part B, right? These are all my possible routes. The first route I'm going to test like this. But now, this has got to be longer, right? Because we can go like super far out. And I have to start with 2500, right? So if I start with 2500, it already figures out if it's safe or not, figures out the haul. So yeah, this goes on that route as long as it can until it runs out of air, and then it stops. So if com input cell is there, and I want the most lucrative route of all of these, right? It's not going to be those at the bottom, obviously. It's going to be 18,100. Is that right? That doesn't sound familiar to me. No, that is not right. Let's see what we did wrong here. So if I've got this route here, I should be able to do. Oh, I'm not adding up. I'm not doing everything. All right, there we go. Now we're doing everything. That was what the problem was the sum product here, and we're not going to go. It's not going to be. Might be one of those at the end. Let's see. So now this, I just need to make this if error nothing, right? Now I've got all the routes, and the best one is 20,400. All right, stop the timer. Thanks for watching. Bye.